everyone! Welcome to Lesson 5, which is Evaluating Messages and Images of Different Types of Text. Communication in today's 21st century demands learners to become critical readers of different text types reflecting different cultures. But what are these texts? These texts provide the means for communicating and form an important part of study in any given course. It means that it is very important to understand how the features of text affecting reading comprehension, particularly in examining similarities and differences of the traditional print-based and multimodal text. According to Pardo, explains that these types of text share characteristics that may include an understanding of the author's intent, the social purpose of the text, how it is structured, how well it is written, the subject matter, vocabulary, language choices, the reading level, and other surface matters or features, which means we can therefore say that evaluating text types is given emphasis on these characteristic modes that offer significant information that could help enrich an available schema. In evaluating messages and images of different types of text requires the evaluator to comprehend the initial textual data that lie on text features. And it involves the active construction of meaning through the interaction of the evaluator who is engaged on critically reading print-based or multimodal texts. But what are these print-based and multimodal texts that we are saying here? Print-based refers to those texts that are prepared in prints. It means that these are paper-based. These are printouts. In IT, we call this hard copies. But, take note of this, any printed text is a multimodal text since it involves various communication modalities. Hence, we can say that multimodal text refers then to those types of text that use a combination of two or more communication modes. For instance, or for example, the print, image, and a spoken text as in film or computer presentations. So, we can consider those as multimodal text. Actually, what we are doing right now, the PowerPoint presentation, this is considered to be a multimodal text. In today's 21st century, however, readers tend to devote much of their time reading and comprehending multimodal text. Using multimodal text then requires learner to reconsider its nature, the cultural diversity of readers, and the complex technological environments. These texts should therefore be selected with care for the purpose of exploring one key understanding of how texts have different meanings for readers with different cultural orientations. Still, cultural sensitivity is still being considered and must be applied when evaluating messages and images of different types of text, particularly printed-based and multimodal texts. What are these multimodal texts? What are these? When a text is combined to two or more semiotic systems. What are the semiotic systems? These are linguistic, visual, audio, gestural, and spatial. It is considered to be multimodal text. Ma'am, question, what is semiotic system? Semiotic is the study of meaning making. It explores signs and symbols as important components of communication. According to the syllabus of the Australian curriculum, it mentions that language modes such as listening, speaking, reading, writing, viewing, and representing are often integrated and interdependent activities used in evaluating text in order to shape meaning, and that any combination of the modes may be involved in responding to or composing print, sound, visual, or multimedia text. Therefore, multimodal texts are also printed, digital, and or being created live. Okay? What are the forms of multimodal text? So as you can see here, as being stated here, these forms of multimodal text, you are already acquiring this, or you are already using this. Now you are being informed that these are forms of multimodal text. Like for example, the paper. This form is print-based, such as the books, comics, posters, magazines. Okay? Another form of multimodal text is what we call the digital. Of course, you are in IT, so more or less, you are very knowledgeable about this. It is a computer-based like slide presentation. So what we are doing right now, the PowerPoint presentation. Emails, of course, okay? You do send and you do receive emails. We have your ebooks, okay? Ebooks, you usually use this in your IT kasi you should always be updated with all the upgrades in technology. Blogs, e-posters, web pages, social media, okay? Animations, films, movies, and video games. These are digital multimodal texts. And I know you're always engaging yourself in using this multimodal text. Of course, live. It is a form of actual performance or an event. So every day we see live screenings or live videos of different people around the world through Facebook, through YouTube, through blogging, so forth and so on. So we were able to define a while back that multimodal texts are combinations of semiotic systems, which are the linguistic, visual, audio, gestural, and spatial. But what are these linguistic systems? It refers to the linguistic components like vocabulary, structure, and grammar of a text. Okay? So in short, we can say that linguistic system is what you say. Okay? Visual system. It pertains to the color, vectors, and viewpoint in still and moving objects. This pertains now to what you see. Audio system. This mode refers to the volume, pitch, and rhythm of music and sound effects of a presentation. Or we can say that this system is what you hear. Gestural system. It denotes the movement, facial expression, and body language of the characters. Or we can say this is a system that is what you do. Spatial system. It indicates proximity, direction, position of layout, and organization of objects in space. Or we can say that this is the environment you are into communicating or into evaluating the multimodal text. So, we can say that these are the systems that what you see, what you say, what you hear, what you do, and what environment you are in. That is the easiest way to understand the semiotic systems. Now let's move forward in critical reading and listening. Okay? So multimodal text requires readers. Of course, it's a requirement for readers and listeners to become critical thinking readers and listeners. Why? It is simply because comprehension is the central goal of both reading and listening. The ability to comprehend multimodal text develops students to become critical readers and listeners, as well as active evaluators of multimodal text. If you do not know how to read or understand, if you do not know how to listen and comprehend, you will never be an active evaluator of a certain multimodal text. So, the ticket to becoming a good evaluator of a certain multimodal text, you must be a critical reader and a good listener. And to become a critical reader and listener, there are key elements to consider in the communication situation. Of course, we know this. This includes in the communication cycle, which are the sender, message, medium, receiver, or the audience, and the context. Because these key elements provides now an understanding to those multimodal texts. Hence, or we can say therefore, that this knowledge should be expanded in order to accommodate and include in your understanding the messages multimodal text provides. Critical reading of multimodal text. Okay? Critical reading is the process of reading that goes beyond comprehension of a text. It means to say that one to be a critical reader, he or she must be actively involved in responding to the reading text. Okay? You know what? Reading is different from looking. When you read, you must understand. When you look, you just look. You just want to look. Okay? So if you are holding a certain magazine, you do not just look on the images, but you should read. You should understand the content of the magazine, the purpose of it, why it is being created. So that is being a critical reader. It means to say, again, that you must involve yourself to responding to reading the text. It is very useful at all stages of academic study actually, but it is particularly important when evaluating messages of multimodal text. Critical reading involves carefully considering and evaluating a reading text, what it is, identifying the strengths and implications of the text. What is the purpose of this? Identifying the weaknesses of the text. What are some questions that we could see? Okay? And looking at the image and deciding how the reading fits into the greater academic context. Okay? So, we can say that one who is a critical reader or a person, we can say that a person is a critical reader if he is inquisitive. Meaning that the person who we can consider as a critical reader always asks questions about the text. Hence, the reader closely examines the key elements of the text. These elements may affect how strong the message it is. That is, how convincing it is. However, before you consider the message of a text, you should build up a background information about the text or an image. Consider the following questions from Thoughtful Learning in the year 2014. So these questions, okay, are being indicated on your activity. So later, we will expand or we will give examples on how we answer these questions. Okay, so consider these questions. In the source, who created the message? Is the source reliable? Was it by a news organization, a public citizen, an editorial team of a scientific journal, or an advertiser? Of course, you should know. Okay? You should know to whom thus the text or the message came from. Who is the sender of the message? Does the message includes reliability? Or does it includes a fact, or is it true? Okay. Next, message. Of course, right after knowing who is a sender, you should know what is inside the text or what is the content of the text. Okay, you may ask these questions. What does the message say? Subject, the main point, and support. Is the information fair and logical? Is it balanced? Is there is there a bias, or is there a bias that is being indicated on the text, or none? Okay, there shouldn't be bias on it. What points of view are shared in the message? Which ones are left out? What images or sounds catch your attention? Okay, another is on the medium. In order for you to know the medium, what type of text is used to deliver the message? Is it a print-based? Is it in a PowerPoint presentation like this? Is it via email or post-mail, messenger, and many more? What are the advantages and limitations of the text format? Okay, is the message being sent in a fast way, or you were able to receive the message immediately right after the date it was being sent? Another, in the audience. Okay, when we say audience, this refers now to the receiver of the text or the message. Okay, so who is the target audience of the message? You will know who are the target of the audience of the message based from the content or the subject or the source of the message. How might other people interpret the message of the text? The interpretation of it, the meaning and the understanding that is being indicated on the text. And of course, the context. What is the purpose of the sender or of the message of the sender to the receiver? Who controls the transmission of this message? What organization particularly sent the message? Okay? So these questions, we will specifically try to answer these questions on the given example on lesson 5.2 later. Okay, so let's move forward to listening as a critical thinking activity. Okay, listening is a voluntary active process. It is psychological. Sometimes when people are talking, even though we do not want to hear it, but we would want to listen to it. Right? Take note, hearing is different from listening. Okay? Hearing is simply just hearing. You heard it. But when it comes to listening, you are particularly understanding the discussion that is being talked about, between you and your company, or between other people to other people. Okay, so listening is different from hearing, actually. So according to Lynch, in 2013, adults listen 50% or less, while teenagers like you listen only 25% or less. So studies show that those who practice listening skills get better grades, higher pay, and achieve their goals more often than those who do not. So if I were you, you should be a listener. You should be not just a listener, but a good listener and a critical listener. If you would want to gain higher grade, if you would want to have higher pay, and if you would want to achieve a better goal of your life later, you should be a good listener. For you to be able to access the message of an argument, you must be a critical reader. Critical listening requires active thinking because it goes far beyond just hearing a speaker's message. Again, listening is different from hearing. It is far beyond hearing. It involves analyzing the information of his speech and making important decisions about truth, authenticity, and relevance. Kajan Vomeyer claims that listening is a critical thinking activity. Hence, also Lynch qualifies that critical thinking involves being able to access the strengths and weaknesses of an argument involves being able to distinguish between the fact, theory, opinion of an argument, allows for thinking outside of the box, meaning you should anticipate or anticipation is being applied, allows for compromise and growth, your development as a speaker, as a listener, involves being able to judge the credibility of sources, requires accessing the quality of evidence, involves discerning relationship between ideas, involves priorities on what to remember and in what context, allows for fewer mistakes and reduces trial and error in everyday life. Yes, if you are a critical listener, it allows you to do fewer mistakes and reduces trial and error in your everyday life. You should understand particularly every word that is being said to you. Okay? Critical thinking does not mean negative thinking. It is a normal process that requires practice and reinforcement. It requires an open mind and the ability to consider and understand all sides of an issue. Correct, do not be one-sided. If there is a certain issue, remember that you should listen from both sides. Okay? It should always be balanced. Okay? It means, or critical thinking means replacing name-calling and images which reason, compromise, and the ability to persuade instead of attack. Okay? When you listen, you have the ability to particularly identify the truth, the opinion, and that is being, or is it only a theory? In short, that when you listen critically, you have a better understanding on what is good and right and what is truth and wrong. Okay? You should always be balanced. Okay? And better listening to a certain issue or to a certain situation or to a certain discussion. Okay? You may be able to acquire growth in yourself because you will particularly polish your critical thinking skills. Not just that, listening skills and reading skills. Multimodal text demand one to process critical thinking because listening and reading are two language skills that requires this active mental processing. Take note, listening and reading are two language skills. They are different. That requires active mental processing. Okay? It means that when you listen, your mental capacity or your mental activity is active. No? It's processing the acquisition of the message, or you are understanding the message that you are being or that you are listening to. Likewise with the reading. When you read, do not just look and read, but particularly understand every word that is being indicated. This is the thing that I always observe. When I give you instructions, you just merely read it. You just merely look at it. But you do not doubt or hesitate, that you do not ask questions at all. You particularly depend on your classmates' explanation, classmates' understanding, but in your own understanding, it is as if you are not aware. It is as if you are not very or you are not giving all your efforts to understand. No, particularly because we are on a difficult situation right now, and you are in college, so better practice your listening and reading comprehensions and develop your critical thinking skills through listening and reading. Okay? Hey, let's proceed. To analyze multimodal text, John Baumeyer suggests to readers and listeners to perform the following. First, identify support for the claims. This means performing research to determine the process of the speaker used to actually gather facts and information. Look for things like dates and sources. Okay? Next, evaluate the argument of the speaker or the text. Try to figure out whether the speaker is using emotional appeals, a logical argument, or actual evidence to state the case. Sometimes, a speaker uses overstatements to stress a point and to make it more appealing. It is perfectly legal, but it can be misleading. This is especially true if you have not done your homework when it comes to evaluating an argument. There are a few things you can do to get the most information. Okay? So this ends lesson 5.1. Quote from Aristotle, a Greek philosopher: "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." So see you on lesson 5.2.